Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. Listen to Star Wars Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule, read by Mark Thompson, and Star Wars The High Republic, A Test of Courage, written by Justina Ireland and read by Kaylor Lee. Available now wherever audiobooks are sold.
This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 380. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Episode 8 ILM VFX 2017 coffee mug. Thrilled to chat with each and every one of you today about the amazing world of Star Wars. On today's show, Tom Gross and Cory Clubb return to talk about Steam Into Star Wars, a local event we do here for the high school that myself and Tom Gross work at, talking about how Star Wars brings people together through a love of literature and reading. And after the break, we'll talk about Star Wars The High Republic, this new massive initiative that, of course, is sweeping the galaxy of Star Wars fandom, to talk about what we know so far about this, a little bit about Light of the Jedi, without any spoilers, of course, and so much more. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi. One quick note I should add before we jump directly into the show is that, as some of you heard this week on Coffee with Kenobi's podcast feed, we're doing things a little bit differently. Of course, every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, we do Facebook Live. It's so much fun. I've been doing it now since March of 2020. The feedback has been great, and the interactivity I have with members of the Star Wars community is just wonderful. And I'm trying to build that audience, quite honestly. If as many people watch Facebook Live as listen to Coffee with Kenobi's podcast, then so many more people would get to interact more directly with me and members of the community through the show, because we do our top fives each week. All of your thoughts are read directly on Facebook Live, and it's just great fun. So I really want to bring more attention to that show because it's so much fun to do, and I can't tell you how much I love the Facebook Live community that we have fostered and grown. Every week, you're going to hear regular Coffee with Kenobi, naturally every Thursday, as it's always been, except for, of course, when The Mandalorian comes out, because we get so excited to share those reviews. But normally it'll be Thursdays, and then Monday nights, after I do the live show and upload the video to Instagram and YouTube, and of course it stays on Facebook, I'm going to take the audio of that only and release it as a podcast episode, because it really is a podcast. It's just a video podcast. But I'm hoping to, again, bring attention to the great stuff we're doing over at Facebook Live because of this wonderful Star Wars community that I'm so blessed to be a part of. So let's go ahead and jump into the regular Coffee with Kenobi, talking about Steam Into Star Wars and the High Republic.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. Happy New Year to everyone. It is the first official show of 2021. Of course, now we have the audio for each of our Facebook Lives. If you're not able to catch the video with us at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, or watch it on YouTube or Instagram, you can certainly listen to the audio each and every week as a bonus Coffee with Kenobi. But on the main show this week, very exciting, we've got Tom Gross.
Hello.
And Cory Clubb.
Howdy, howdy.
They are, of course, our longtime compadres in the Force, and they're going to speak with us about Steam Into Star Wars, which is the annual event we do at the high school where Tom and I work. And then we're going to talk about 2021 and what's coming from Star Wars, but especially the High Republic. So, Tom, you and I have been talking about this for about a month. Can you go ahead and let everybody know kind of how Steam Into Star Wars evolved and how we've been involved over the years?
Yeah, Steam Into Star Wars started actually as Star Wars Reads Day, where Lucasfilm promotes reading and Star Wars Reads Day in October, and so we ran that for several years. I guess it was 4 years. We did Star Wars Reads Day at the school. And the way it started is when I came to the school and met you, Dan, I'd always sort of had an inkling of wanting to do something big, a community event to promote. The two things I've always wanted to promote on a big scale are reading and playing games. Face to face, and anything that can bring people together, either through conversation of talking about a book or a comic or something like that, or getting them face to face, playing a game that we can enjoy and have fun, maybe a little friendly competition. And so after I met you, I was like, well, I think we should do a Star Wars event that promotes reading. And
you want to tell the story really quickly about how I first let you know of my connections to Star Wars?
Sure. It was so
I've seen all the movies.
I was sitting in the.
Yeah, I have a lightsaber.
I was invited to come talk to the English department. Is this the story you want me to tell?
Sure.
And it was my first week of school. In fact, it might have been even my first day working at the school. And the English department chair asked me to come talk to the English department. And so I was sitting in the hot seat, quite literally. I was in a chair in the middle of a U-shaped classroom, and all of you were sitting all the way around me. It was like theater in the round.
Like Superman when he's about to go to the Phantom Zone.
Yes. And so I was kind of giving a little background about myself. And I said, well, I'm a big comic book and Star Wars fan. And like all eyes swung over to you, Dan. And I looked at you and you're like, yeah, I kind of like Star Wars. I'm like, oh, cool. Awesome. Then I kind of went on from there. And then later on in the afternoon, you came into the library. I was sitting at my desk and you came around and you said, so you like Star Wars, huh? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of a Star Wars fan. And he says, you've been to StarWars.com? And I said, well, I'm aware of the website. And sometimes I go there for news and stuff. And so you said, hey, why don't you go there right now and take a look? And I was like, okay. And so I went to StarWars.com and you said, click over here. And I think you took me to like bios of contributors. And I scrolled down and lo and behold, there is a Dan Zare. And I looked at you and I looked back and I go, yeah, that's you. I was like, well, then I probably don't like Star Wars quite as much as you, but that's actually not true.
Yeah,
but I'm definitely not as notable. But so that was how. And so it wasn't long after that I was like, we need to do something Star Wars wise. And then I don't remember if it was you that came to me with Star Wars Reads Day, or if I saw it and came to you and said, hey, what is this? Because I don't know that I've seen it. I'd been aware of it prior. And so you and I kind of the first year, it was sort of last minute, just did something there in the school. I remember we did a Skype with a elementary school and talked to those kids about Star Wars, and we just had some fun that day, and we did some trivia in the library that week. And then the next year, I thought, let's make an event of it. And so we chose a Saturday in October, and it just kind of went from there, and it never really built over those first 4 years of doing the Saturday event. And a lot of it had to do with, the weather in, where we live is still really nice in October, and high school and youth football is still like we're in the heat of the season in October during that time. And still have soccer leagues going on, and people are just busy in October, as is our school, very busy. And it was hard to find a time. And we tried, I think, every weekend over those 4 years, every weekend in October to get like a large event. We were gathering anywhere from 100 to 250 people, which is wonderful. I was always grateful for the crowds, don't get me wrong. But I felt like we could do something bigger. And so working with the school administration, working with you, Dan, and then kind of reimagining how this would look, I moved away from Star Wars Reads Day and chose a new name for it, and I called it STEAM into Star Wars. And the STEAM, of course, is the acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. And then I put the disclaimer, and reading, at the end. We should call it STEAMer. And
also, we Star Wars Reads Day is usually in October, and it used to be a specific day or a specific weekend in October, and then it became any weekend in October. And then it just became something where it didn't work for our schedule at the school because of the reasons you just mentioned. So it naturally evolved into what you just mentioned.
Yeah, and so we moved it to January. A lot of that came from that's when the school was most available. But then as I started looking at, because one of the things I wanted to do was I always had you guys, Cory and Dan, you came every year and did Coffee with Kenobi live, and that was always a hit of the event. But also another hit of the event was always having the 501st. And the
Yep.
501st also, because of Star Wars Reads in October and other October events, they were really hard to get. And so I moved it to January, which seemed like a crazy time weather-wise, and holidays are just getting over, but it actually turned out to be a really good time because there are no conventions. So as I was about to say, one thing I wanted to do with our Star Wars Day was to start bringing in community members, especially artists and authors. And I found that the first week, first few weeks of January, there aren't a lot of big conventions going on. And so our local artists and authors who might go to Indianapolis or Chicago or, some other cons in the area, in the region, they're wide open and they're looking for things to do. And so I was, pretty easily able to get some really notable local artists. And Cory, you were there as an author, and I found a couple other
Yep.
authors from our local area to come. They're science fiction writers. And for some reason, that really pulled a draw. I think, part of it was they used their own marketing, but also I expanded our audience. These weren't just people who are interested in Star Wars now, it's people who are interested in this art. But then also the podcasts, and we brought in a new podcast, the Rebel Base Card podcast that Greg McLaughlin does. He's in the region, so he came down. I invited Dan Lowe from Fantha Tracks and Ross Holleben and Megan McLaughlin, all from Fantha Tracks, came, and we started doing some special author panels and artist panels, and we did a podcasting news writing panel. It was just so much fun, and lo and behold, on our 5th annual Steam into Star Wars, we got about 450, maybe even 500 people to come to our school on a inclement day. I mean, we were really afraid that we were going to have to cancel because it was forecast for ice and snow. And we took a risk. We crossed our fingers, got the blessing of our administration to say, go for it. And we did it. And it turned out to actually be not a nice morning, but not an awful morning. And it was wonderful. And Dan and Cory, you guys, of course, were a huge part of that, as were, all the people who came, all the guests, the people I just mentioned, the students. I can't forget to mention our students who the day is sponsored by book club that I sponsor and the game club that I sponsor in the library. So I had all of those kids volunteering. We even got some of our student council and our leadership group students that came and volunteered that day. Robotics team, science club, our public library was involved. We had principals from our grade schools come and do reading, and we had athletes do reading with kids that day. Oh my gosh, you guys, it was so great. I had so many great volunteers that day, and a lot of senior leadership in my clubs last year, that I was actually able to kind of step back a couple times and look around and just take it all in. And oh my gosh, it was so wonderful seeing you guys visiting, seeing our Star Wars community that I invited to come, seeing all of you connect and see each other and talk and interview on the show last year, and then seeing just our community, our high school students and the grade school students and the parents and the families just coming and enjoying and having fun that involves Star Wars, and then all these important learning aspects that we need in our education. So, I just want to say, Dan, thank you to you for supporting me and kind of having my back all these years and encouraging me to push forward. Because if I didn't have someone like you that was just kind of like, hey, how's it coming? How's it looking? And just kind of reminding me along the way. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I need to get this done. It probably wouldn't happen. And Cory, your attendance there always has just been, it's just a joy. And having you last year as an author and sitting in an author panel, and that's an area that I talk to you on the podcast all the time, but I don't know you with your author hat. And so that was so much fun having you in that aspect. But then COVID-19 hit. And I was looking forward to, the 6th year and looking and seeing how we can make it bigger. I reserved a larger space of the school, not just our NPR, but I reserved a gym to expand and get bigger. And COVID-19 hit, and I kind of held my breath and kept my fingers crossed. And finally, I talked to the students when we came back to school in August, and I said, so Star Wars Day, how are you guys feeling about this? And we sort of hemmed and hawed about it. I didn't get quite the response that made me feel like this is something I definitely, need to pursue. I said, well, let's keep it under our hats. Let's see what it looks like in October. I went back to the kids, and they're great kids, and they all were like, yeah, we could do this. We could make it happen. But I didn't get the like rah that I was wanting for this. And I'm not sitting here to condemn or shake my finger and say the students weren't behind me, because they were behind me. But I look at their lives and I look at, they're adjusting to a new way of learning. They're sitting in the school part-time. They're doing stuff at home, and they're remote learning, and their lives are different too. And we're asking people to wear masks and to socially distance. And so I think they just didn't have the fire. And quite frankly, when I thought about it in person, it didn't really appeal to me either, to be quite honest. So what we decided to do was we decided to do a series of videos, just a small series of videos to kind of keep the fire burning, just to remind people that, hey, Steam into Star Wars, this is our time of year. First full week of January, this is our year. This is when Steam into Star Wars happened last year, and this is when it's going to happen in 2022. And so, Dan, you took part in these videos that we recorded about a week ago. And we're releasing one video a day. And it's me, some students, an alum of our school who's super talented, has always taken part in Steam into Star Wars with us, and you, Dan, and we talk about Star Wars literature. And so we did a video talking about children's books. We did a video on young adult literature, Star Wars novels, nonfiction books, and then my favorite show. And I not to give anything away, and this show will probably release at the same time this one will. But my favorite show that we did was an impromptu. I said to you guys, Dan, you were there. I said, hey, would you guys mind staying on a little bit longer, and let's talk about our favorite memories of the past? And that show turned out so well. I'm so excited for that show to release. It's releasing on Friday, January 6th. And actually this whole week, January 4th through January 8th is when that show releases. This week, one show a day is releasing on our YouTube channel for the library. The playlist that I called, I'm not sure how people search things on YouTube, so I'm just going to put it out here. It's the WCHS Library's YouTube channel, but the playlist that you're looking for is Steam into Star Wars 2021. It's also, the videos are all being posted on the library's Twitter page, which is at WCHS_308 library. And so check them out. They're not wonderful and high production quality, but I will say this, they were fun to do. And it was fun to talk to the kids about their favorite Star Wars books, because we've got some kids that absolutely love Star Wars as we do. And it was nice to hear their voice and to see what books they are passionate about. In fact, I think they did a better job explaining their books than I did, quite frankly. But it was a lot of fun, and I hope people get to enjoy this. And so, besides this show talking about Steam into Star Wars, Greg McLaughlin of the Rebel Base Card podcast, he also did a special show with me on Steam into Star Wars. So I hope people get to check that out as well. But I think the final line and the bottom line is, we're coming back. We'll be back in 2022. At least that's the hope, and our fingers crossed that, the vaccine will do what it's supposed to do, and we'll all be in a position where next year we're at a place where we can do something in person. And I tell you, I got some cool stuff in my hat waiting to pull out for next year. Some things that I wanted to do this year that I can't wait to reveal and hopefully put into action.
There's so many things to love about Steam into Star Wars, and the passion, the love that you've put into this program. And I think you were overly generous in what you said about me, because you're like the Energizer Bunny with this stuff, man. I feel and do some little things, and we have some fun, and we do a lot of fun stuff with Coffee with Kenobi. But I mean, ultimately, this is your passion project, or one of your passion projects.
It is.
So many wonderful things for the school, and it shows, man. I mean, the authenticity of those videos, if you get a bunch of Star Wars fans in a room and they're positive and they're talking about literature and reading and Star Wars and community, I mean, that's what this event is all about. And last year, I think the three of us, and I think Ross and Greg and everyone who came, Dan Lowe and everyone else,
Yeah.
Megan would agree that it felt like a celebration, that environment. So next year, I mean, we'll have a year to hype it up. I would highly recommend people that are in the Midwest to come and join us because it's a tremendous, tremendous time. You get to talk with a lot of Star Wars fans, and it's awesome. And another irony of what COVID did is, selfishly, I really wanted to be at Steam into Star Wars as an actual author and follow my idol Cory Clubb like he got to here.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to do that yet. So I'm looking forward to the day that actually happens.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun, and you're right. It is a passion project of mine. One thing that I really enjoy doing is bringing people together, and celebrating something we all love. And like I said, it could have been, it might have been games at some point. I might have put together a game convention or something like that. But this has just worked out so well, and the Star Wars community is so supportive of this. And I've met so many people doing this, and just talking about it, and people are like, "Well, that sounds really cool. Can I be a part of that next year?" And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I was like, "Man, I better reserve a gym next year." And so we're gonna do it. And one thing I really appreciate is our superintendent came to me after our fourth event, and he said, "Tom, you really need to keep doing this," because I really was kind of thinking maybe that would be my last one, because like I said, those October ones kind of dwindled, and the weather just was so nice that fourth year. That was kind of like, yeah, maybe it's kind of run its course, so maybe I should start and look at doing something different. And he really talked me back into it and got me excited about it. And he found that time in the school when there wasn't conflict with other groups, because I think the schools, a school is a school, but. And I know all schools are like this, but I feel this way, especially about ours. Ours is a community building. Everything happens in there, from pancake breakfasts in the summer during our town festival to, sporting events, all sorts of stuff that it's hard to find time in there. And so he helped me to find that time that can be the time for Steam into Star Wars. And so that all kind of worked out. But you're right, Dan, I appreciate you saying that, because it is my passion project. And it's been so rewarding. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it here in Coffee with Kenobi this year, because since we're not doing it in person, I didn't want anyone to think that, oh, well, I guess that's over. We're not going to plan that for next year. No, you guys, fill out your January 22 calendar now, because one of those weekends is going to be Steam into Star Wars.
Well, I've got a quick memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. I believe that Star Wars Reads Day then that was our very first Coffee with Kenobi live show. Just you and me, Dan. Was that right?
I think the very, very first one was The Force Awakens at the movie theater.
At the movie theater. Okay, so then that one must have come that following year.
That one had a bigger. Our Steam into Star Wars, or our Star Wars Reads Day one, was a little bit bigger, because people were just running back and forth in front of us while they were trying to get in line for the movies. So yeah, it definitely has that feel.
It just brings it back to like the origins of this podcast. Really, It kind of got our chops underway and our working the live audience, and I think we might have had some giveaways and stuff. But it just kind of brings the core of what this podcast is about: community, conversation, Star Wars, and obviously on the grander scale, just a good fellowship. Again, kudos to you, Tom, for putting it all together. And it's cool to hear the beginnings and some of that stuff, because you're right. I think with COVID in the environment we're kind of dealing with, it's people have to kind of pivot and change and kind of take things in a different direction. So just alone doing something this year is great. Fantastic. I'm probably going to check that out and take a look. But because I want to hear the stories, the memories and stuff, and just that cool stuff.
Fun.
I think it's cool to hear that stuff too. And it's those little moments that I think keep the like you said, the fire burning. And I think that the aspect of it is, well, if it just gets one person interested in this thing or that thing or whatever it may be, then we've done our job type thing. So awesome. I'm glad you're carrying the torch on, and I'm excited for what happens in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, speaking of the future, or rather 200 years before The Phantom Menace, we've got some exciting Star Wars storytelling to just begin to cover throughout 2021. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we will take a closer look at Star Wars: The High Republic. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books but can't find the time? Try listening to them on audio, featuring sound effects, top-notch narrators, and music directly from the movies. Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. Centuries before the Skywalker saga, a new adventure begins. The High Republic is a massive, interconnected, cross-publisher initiative focused on an all-new era of Star Wars storytelling. Listen to Star Wars: Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule and read by Mark Thompson, and A Test of Courage, written by Justina Ireland and read by Kaylor Lee. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/coffee with Kenobi to listen to clips and find your next listen, or buy now wherever books and audiobooks are sold. MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is your one-stop shop for your vacation needs and your plans to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or the cruise lines. Travel looks much different now than it did a couple of months ago, and with the opening of Walt Disney World and soon, hopefully, the opening of Disneyland, you need a place to go where you can trust, and they will help you figure out and navigate all the different circumstances and guidelines that Disney has put out for you. And I can say that we had our vacation modified, and as soon as dates were announced, MEI contacted me directly to help me reschedule, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. So if you are interested in rescheduling your vacation or want to try to plan a Walt Disney World, Disneyland vacation, or anywhere else you want to go on the planet, be sure to contact MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help you maximize your vacation time and dollar, and they will help you figure out all the different changes and modifications going on at the Disney theme parks. They are amazing, and I can tell you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, the peace of mind that Becky Mencken and the crew at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel have given me is invaluable. If you're interested at all, again, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. We are back, and we are going to talk a little bit about Star Wars: The High Republic. Naturally, we understand that the book is fresh into the world. The book birthday was very recent, so we are not about to start changing the plan for Coffee with Kenobi and to ruin the book. And we want spoilers to be something that doesn't show up on the show. So we're going to give time to talk about specifics of Star Wars: The High Republic, specifically Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, which is the first one in this brand new sort of era in Star Wars storytelling. And then the second one is A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland. Like I said, it starts with Light of the Jedi, and then A Test of Courage, and then finally, you're also going to get a chance to see The Great Jedi Rescue by Kevin Scott. Those are all three books that have come out this week. And then we're going to have, let's see, Tom, am I right that The Great Jedi Rescue that's not the comic book series, it's actually Star Wars: The High Republic.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
Yes. And then The Great Jedi Rescue, that's coming out. That comes out. Well, that came out also too. It's only 24 pages. It's ages 6 to 8. And that's like one for younger readers, of course, but it's still all part of the same story. And then Kevin also wrote Star Wars: The High Republic with art by Ariel Anadito and Phil Noto. So those are obviously some pretty serious ones. And then on February 2nd, Into the Gray by Into the Gray. It's Into the Dark. Into the Dark by New York Times bestselling author Claudia Gray, who is absolutely delightful. And if you have not read my interview with her on StarWars.com, it was really, really fun. We really dove into the characters that she has for Into the Dark. And basically what these books are doing, Light of the Jedi sets the stage for this new era in Star Wars storytelling, where the Jedi are, what Coruscant's role is in the galaxy, very different ways to look at the Force. But then A Test of Courage, The Great Jedi Rescue, Star Wars: The High Republic comics, Into the Dark, and then future novels all take specific aspects and kind of add a little bit more to the lore. But if you just want an overall overview of what's going on, it's certainly Light of the Jedi. And there's a lot of other news too. But before we get to the news that was just released earlier this week, guys, kind of let me know your thoughts on Light of the Jedi. Cory, I know you've been devouring this book.
Yeah, I was happy to get a preview copy from the good people there at this publisher, Del Rey, and it was just one on the top of my list. I know they pushed it back. It was supposed to come out, I think, December originally, and now it's out in January recently. But it is, it makes me feel a lot like I felt like when Mandalorian was kind of announced. It was like kind of this new landscape, if you will, of Star Wars. I still live in Star Wars, the genre, of course, in space and whatnot, but it's kind of, I like to call us, I'm kind of formulating a review as I'm reading through it. I'm about halfway through, and I like to say this is a blank canvas to some degree. And boy, what can you do with a blank canvas? Well, who's the painter? That would be the writer doing their thing, adding color splashes, here and there, and sculpting and changing, and just molding it into something that's fresh and new. That's what is the biggest, brightest thing about this book so far for me. Is it's just a lot of new aspects. It's funny because it's like you said, it's 200 years before the Phantom Menace. So again, there's just so much to play with. There's so much deep origin, and again, just really a lot of fun ways to be able to just kind of play around the Star Wars universe and explore what's going on during this time. So I just really enjoyed it so far. It's really been a good introduction into this time period too. I think it's interesting starting off with a book, because that is something that anybody can pick up and kind of formulate in their head. Well, this is how I see this character, and this is how I see this character, and it kind of, there's some descriptions, but also in a sense of, you can kind of lead on in your respective ways and take it a chunk at a time. And, sometimes with a movie, you have 2 hours and you have to kind of digest it all and figure it out. And this is kind of a nice way to start things off, kick things off, and be able to get readers and fans obviously getting them hungry for more. So there's a lot more coming too, like you mentioned, those titles and the comic series. And I think there's a lot more in store for this era of books and comics and such. But boy, it is just a great frontier for Star Wars, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Really, like I said, I'm halfway through Light of the Jedi, and I couldn't be more happy with it. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't want to give away any plot points or things like that.
Absolutely,
but
sure.
Stuff about the Force and how he describes the Force and how it's like music, I thought was so beautiful.
Well, that's interesting because that's one aspect of it. That's just, he talks about some of the the Jedi are in this book, obviously, and how they use the Force, and it's detailed in certain ways, and that's something we think of. As a fan, you always think of how would I use this Force. I mean, that's how I think about it sometimes. As a kid running around with a stick in my hand, thinking as a lightsaber. It has that mystical element to it. How do you perceive it? How do you use it? You use certain aspects and not other aspects of it. It's just they describe this in some great detail, and it's what's really cool about this, and you can tell from the cover, is the fact there's a lot of Jedi. I mean, this isn't just a Luke Skywalker book and we're centric around him and his adventures, but this is really a whole host of different characters, and sometimes it can kind of daunting, but it's really kind of taking a piece at a time through this novel so far. And I think that's what the aspect of it too. I think hopefully the comic series would be like, kind of showcasing some of these really big figureheads in this time period, and seeing how they, like you said, use the Force and come to their Jedi ways. So it's really cool. I'm really fascinated by it so far.
I agree. So anyway, after a little bit of time has passed, we'll dive into these books individually. We really haven't done any concentrated shows on novels for years and years and years. So many other things that are coming up, movies and The Mandalorian and Clone Wars and Rebels and all this great stuff. So I'm looking forward to very much diving into that. And I've got some very exciting interviews coming from some of the creators of the High Republic as well. But Tom, I know you've been listening to the audiobook. Of course, this episode is sponsored by Penguin Random House Audio. Tell me kind of your initial thoughts on this thing.
Yeah, and Cory, you hit the nail on the head in my mind by using the word frontier, because that's how I'm approaching this. High Republic era is I'm trying. So as I started listening to the book, you hear the familiar "a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," which is instantly takes my brain to something that I know. So I've been forcing myself as the story continues to tell myself, approach this as if it were a brand new story to you. And because it is a brand new story, just because I know what a lightsaber is, and because I've heard of and I know what a Jedi is in my mind, because I know Luke Skywalker and Mace Windu and Rey and whatnot. I'm trying to, as I'm listening to this, think of like this is something brand new in my head. And I'll say, quite frankly, the writing of it introduces it as if it's all new. At least that's the way I'm interpreting it. I mean, Charles Soule's describing a lightsaber hilt like it's like I've never seen one before. And like you said, the way some of the ways in which the Force are being used are not what I know. It's not this. Well, anyway, it's been a lot of fun listening to it, and it is a little daunting because there are a lot of names in this book, at least so far. And sometimes when I'm listening to it, my concentration isn't quite as good on the names as when I'm reading it. And so I'm like, well, wait, who's that? And so I'm kind of going back and forth. I'm doing a little rewinding and replaying some parts. But it is a frontier. I hear names that I recognize, but everything seems new. And something that I found interesting in my own awareness was, we live in a world of the Mandalorian right now. That's where our brains have been. And really, we've been in a world of post-Empire, where Emperor Palpatine's job of discrediting the Jedi he's done a pretty good job of that. But in this book, a Jedi shows up during conflict, and like everyone relaxes or they're happy about it. I was like, oh, that is so refreshing. It's just, but it is a brand new story, and it has been just delightful and refreshing to listen to this story so far.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So, do you have anything either you want to say about either Into the Dark or A Test of Courage? Any particular compunction either way? Do you want to move on to the news we heard this week?
I think as far as I'm concerned, we can move on to the news. I don't know a whole lot about those other two books. I'm taking one at a time right now.
Well, I mean, the Into the Dark, like I said, is a much more in-depth character piece, in my opinion, because it focuses on a certain amount of Jedi. Before I interviewed Claudia, I took very detailed notes on every character, and I was able to. It's pretty cool when you can get the pronunciation from the author herself, as far as how these names are pronounced, because that's important when I'm reading it. I want to pronounce it correctly. And then understanding kind of love and care that goes into this, and the world building, and the fact that they all went to Skywalker Ranch together, along with Matt and Pablo and Leland and other Lucasfilm, royalty. It's pretty cool. I mean, to be a fly on the wall for that would be stunning. But let me go over some of the announcements that came out this week. There was a live. Daniel Jose Older and Claudia Gray were there. Kristen, of course, from StarWars.com was the one who was the interviewer for all this stuff, but we got a lot of stuff about they tapped a lot into the dark. Again, I recommend my interview with Claudia Gray because I think it goes over a lot of stuff. We also learned that Star Wars Insider, and some of you already know this most likely, is returned to doing some original fiction pieces that you can only find in Insider, but Charles Soule has one in there. They're going to be called Starlight Stories. We found out that there's going to be a graphic novel called The Monster of Temple Peak by Kevin Scott and Rachel Stott, which is really, really exciting. And, Kevin is just so good. He's the one who did the audiobook exclusive of Dooku Jedi Lost, which is tremendous. Then we've got Out of the Shadows. Also, this is written by Justina Ireland. It's her first young adult novel for the initiative. And that's going to cover the ongoing adventures of Jedi Knight for Nestra Rao, Padawan Reith Silas, who's Into the Dark, and then aspiring inventor Avon Staros. Then we have another new announcement, Star Wars: The High Republic Race to Crash Point Tower by Daniel Jose Older. This is the second middle grade novel set in the era And then we've got manga. We've got The Edge of Balance, story by Shimiya Shinya and Jessina Ireland. That is also going to be from, I think this is from, well, I don't know who's publishing it. Oh, from Viz Media. Yes. It's the first in a new series. And then we've also got, as if that weren't enough, StarWars.com is going to have a brand new bi-monthly show by Christina Ariel, who's going to be taking fans on a deep dive behind the scenes with creators, artists, and authors in a new Star Wars The High Republic show. It also was announced, Michael Siglin, who's in charge of Lucasfilm Publishing, talked about basically this is a multi-year project rollout, and there are names for each phase. Right now we're in phase 1, Light of the Jedi. Phase 2, whenever that comes out and whenever it's in that, will be known for Quest of the Jedi. And then phase 3, again, whenever that comes out, it'll be years down the road, most likely, be Trials of the Jedi. So this thing has got a pretty massive rollout, and there's a lot. I can just imagine what the huge map looks like in Lucasfilm as far as what everything looks like and where they're going to go with this. And speaking for myself, I'm thrilled about it. I'm excited. Speaking of Steam into Stars, it will promote and encourage more literacy and reading, because I think that is so fundamental to building a strong foundation as a society and as a people. But it's also a little overwhelming because there's so much that's going to be coming our way. Guys, do you kind of feel the same way?
You're right. As you kind of went through the titles there and the different categories they're going to be in, I was kind of wrapping my head around that. And I remember when they first announced this series, this era, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll have to read this book, and then I'll have to read this book. And after a time, you kind of think, well, which one do I read first, or which one does, what's the timeline on that sometimes? And do I read the manga first? Do I go back and catch up on the, Star Wars Insider side stories? That's what kind of makes it daunting for me, because it's like, well, I can't get access to that one yet, but I can get this one. Or, and then, like you said, just keeping it kind of all in your head. Well, this event happened first, and this happened next, and this person did this. And, and it's kind of what Star Wars is. Personally, I think I'd prefer a solid, book series that kind of walks you through the bigger events, and these other things might be offshoots and side stories, which sounds like kind of that's how it's going. But I'd like just to know, like, what's happening and where, and what's the best order to read these events in. But yeah, I guess that'd be the only thing would be set back for me. Other than that, would be just getting access to some of this stuff. It's as these debut. I think the comic book series came out today, even as we record this. So that's on a whole other piece of it too. Just getting access to these, I think, was pretty hot seller. I mean, as far as comic books go. So there's just a lot of different things going on, and like you said, the massive timeline, and I imagine that they have these word phrases or something sticking up, and there's like these pins of yarn going back and forth. Well, this goes over here, and this, it's just like, boy, that's got to be fun, but also intense. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree. It does seem like a lot. Now, my librarian hat, when I put that on, I'm so excited about all the literature, because it's multi-leveled as far as like reading. So little kids can get involved in the more picture book type things. And then you get into some of the chapter books that are maybe for some more advanced readers, and then young adult, and then the novels. So I think, I love that aspect of it. But then when I take off my hat and I put on my consumer hat, my Star Wars fan hat, I kind of go, whoa, wait a second. And I'm in your camp, Cory, where it's like, this is a lot. And where my mind goes is it starts to feel a little bit like when we're in that era where all what are now the Legends books were coming out. And it was like, what Legends book do I follow? Which one's telling a story, quote, and which one is supplemental, and which one is, and it really got kind of confusing. And I sort of set books aside at that time because I couldn't keep up with what I should be reading or what might interest me. And so I think one thing they've done that helps sort of wrap my brain around it is, as you mentioned, Dan, the 3 phases. So as long as it's clear to me as a reader and a consumer what phase a collection of books belongs to, that helps me to wrap my brain around it.
I think it'll be really clear.
Yeah. And then the other is, and Cory, you alluded to this, is which of these books is telling the story?
It's Charles Soule's books.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I think as long as those sorts of, things stay that way, to where it's clear which one is telling the core, which ones are supplemental, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, when I watched the author feature that was this week, and it took me a while before it dawned on me that, oh wait, they're announcing new titles, because I thought the original announcement had a lot of content. Yeah. Then this week they announced the new content. It was kind of like, whoa, okay. And I have to say, the one I am, besides the novels that are going to tell the core story, the one that I am pumped for is Master of Temple Peak. That just sounds awesome.
I know.
The Mandalorian has taught me that Star Wars can have some pretty wicked, awesome monsters.
Yeah.
And so this just looks, the cover of it is stunning. It's fun. It's a graphic novel. I mean, I love that even more. So that's my number one read of this new set of books.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, be sure to let us know what you're interested in as far as the High Republic. How far are you into Light of the Jedi? And what do you think about this new direction in Star Wars and storytelling? It's fascinating. It's a little daunting, but that's a good thing, because you can't say we don't have a lot of Star Wars content, because we have our cup most certainly runneth over here on Coffee with Kenobi and in the world of Star Wars.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. Listen to Star Wars Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule, read by Mark Thompson, and Star Wars The High Republic, A Test of Courage, written by Justina Ireland and read by Kaylor Lee. Available now wherever audiobooks are sold. As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me, and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends, as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. I really appreciate our CWK Alliance members: Carol Cantwell, James Kersey, Greg Hargrove, Cato McNichol, Mary Purdue, Terry King, Smooth Rivera, J.C. Poe, Ed Kimoto, Robert Avila, Dustin Mills, Chelsea Sansbury, Tyler Pompa, Hannah, Alex Procasio, Ian Thompson, David Nicely, Simbat Depterdarian, Christine Turk, Ross Halliban, Kurt McQuellan, Dan Ream, Colby Mead, Brian Harding, Frank Mulder, Blake Weaver, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Chris Skavarka, Jeff Ellis, Yancey Evans, Daz Davies, Susan Gray, Thea Selby, Christian Dale, Brian McKinney, Jim Capron, Connie Shee, Jared Cantor, Jason Hall, Eric Struthers, Greg McLaughlin, Aaron Harris, Mark Suter, Angela Sauce, and Dennis Keithley. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Cory Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZairCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. Check us out on Pinterest or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi. And I want to thank both of you gentlemen for returning to Coffee with Kenobi, and for sharing your thoughts not only on Steven to Star Wars, but literature, and being such incredible positive forces in the community. We certainly appreciate it, and it is certainly needed. I mean, not only do I love doing the show, but I love the feedback and the conversation that I get to have with, of course, the two of you, because you are two of my good friends anyway, or Star Wars or not. But I just think it's just so important to provide an escape, and I'm very grateful for the two of you and the fun work you do online and with the show, and of course with CWK Pour-Over, our weekly Patreon page for Coffee with Kenobi. If you want to be a member of the CWK Alliance, like I alluded to a little bit ago, then every week you get to hear the conversation with myself, Tom, and Cory as we talk about Star Wars, pop culture, and all other kinds of fun stuff. Speaking of that, we have a couple to record after this show, so we're going to jump into that. But before we do, Tom, please let everybody know where they can reach out and follow you and continue the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Join me on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE.
And Cory.
Sure. Follow me on Twitter as well, at Cory Clubb.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
this is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.